he really loves to tell stories and focus on business alignment and the why rather than the system implementation and the how. I'm very curious to know what it is that he does when he says he juggles pins and blows square bubbles. I understand the concept of kayaking. But juggling pins, I don't know if are these kind of dressmaking pins or are they 10-pin bowling pins. You'll have to enlighten us. Scott, I believe also you're great with cartoons and puppet shows, and that your new book, which I actually bought yesterday, Telling Your Data Story, is out. As mentioned, data storytelling or storytelling is the hottest way of getting information across. If you think about how we teach our children, we teach them through telling stories. How do we explain something? Through telling stories. So yeah, let me not take the story out of your mouth. You carry on and off you go.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, I guess. Where you are, let me spotlight myself here. Hopefully I'm coming through okay. Let me dismiss some Teams messages.
Very clearly, very good.
Good, excellent. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Drew. Thanks for having me. Thank you, everybody. Dama, South Africa. I'm pleased to be here. Scott Taylor. I'm going to start with a little once upon a time and help all of you tell your data story, your data management story, with what I call the 3 V's of data management storytelling, with a knowing wink to big data, obviously, and we'll get more into that. One thing I'm very happy about, let you know where I'm calling in from. I'm actually in this little star. If there's a map of the United States with the current winter storm going on, Winter Storm Uri, and I am thankfully in Florida, just outside of its grip. I went from that little yellow dot up in Connecticut a couple days ago and made it just in time. So I'm not quite as south as you are, but definitely south in the US, which is a good place to be. So let me dive right in here. So today's agenda, telling your data management story. I want to talk about why you need a data story, because I feel every data management executive needs to be able to share the narrative about why data is important to their organization. The relevance of data management in the context of broader macro trends, the couple of types of data storytelling, because data storytelling is probably the hottest non-technical thing going on in the data space. And then these 3 V's, vocabulary, voice, and vision. And then I'll show you a way I put it all in play here. Now, I'm all about, as they mentioned in the intro, I'm all about the why, not the how. So what I hope to provide to you today is give you a new way to talk about what you already know. That's my purpose on earth here at this point, is to share some techniques I've learned over my experience on how to explain the strategic value of proper data management. And you'll see my little cartoon head pop up every once in a while giving some tips. So because it's my presentation, I have a whole slide on me. Scott Taylor, the data whisperer. I help calm data down. That's what we all do in the data management space, is help calm data down. We save the data, the whispering for the data part, but you are all data whisperers in your organization one way or the other. Data is big, data is unruly, data is unstructured, data is corrupt sometimes. We have to calm it down, get it managed, and get it applied to business results. My company, Meta Consulting, we're a boutique consultancy. Meta, we are about what it's about, which is the storytelling part for sure. My mission, as I said, is to help you reinforce the strategic value of proper data management. And I provide right now, even though I used to work for these large data companies like Nielsen, Dun & Bradstreet, that's where I really honed my ability to explain the value of data, especially well-managed, well-structured data, to business executives who didn't understand why I was even in the room half the time, but helping the IT side in those days when I started explain that value to the business. So I provide what I call data evangelism as a service, a way to get people excited about the work that you all do. I think I'm probably hardwired for the data management, master data, reference data space, because my parents told me when I was a kid, instead of building with my Lego blocks, I sorted them. So if you sorted your blocks when you were a kid, that's why you're in the data business. And if your children sort their blocks, you want to encourage that. We need more bright minds in the data business. So you got to sort first before you can build. And that's where I see data management having its role, at least metaphorically. I do a ton of content. If you haven't seen it already, please reach out afterwards. I did a puppet show, as they mentioned here, with my two characters, the CDO, the Chief Dog Officer, and the ITB, who is just filled with buzzwords. This was a puppet show I did last year. I've got more episodes coming called Too Much Tech Talk. There's a cartoon on the backstory of master data as a superhero, and then even some bad data ideas you might want to avoid. But I've got 50 videos on YouTube and counting, and so please take a look at some of those as well. And I hear somebody's dog. So happy to have the dog as part of it, but if you can mute in the back, that'd be nice. Spoiler alert, in case you haven't noticed, I don't do a lot of whispering, do I? We saved the whispering for the data. I'm proud to be the number one thought leader in big data, according to Thinkers 360. I'm the host of a 24-hour data event that I encourage all of you to sign up for, called the Master Data Marathon. Take a look at it and just search for that. You'll find it. It's with a group called the Think Linkers. That's in March, and we are literally going 24 hours in a row. We did it last year, so we know we can do it again. And pleased to be part of the who's who of data management, joining Howard as well. So you got a couple of who's on this call here, which is thrilling. People talk about being disruptive in IT, disruptive in the technical space. I will tell you, I've been disruptive since the 4th grade. There's my 4th grade picture and my report card. That's me, in case you can't pick me out. I still have the same attitude for sure. And in my report card, my teacher wrote, "Scott is disruptive and distracting to others." So I take that as a compliment. And of course, I wrote a book, which is where everything you're going to hear from me today comes from. This book, Telling Your Data Story, Data Storytelling for Data Management. It is 99% buzzword free. One of my favorite little comments that somebody made was a must read for anybody who needs funding for data management. That's why this book exists, to help data leaders like yourself create that narrative to capture the hearts and minds of your business stakeholders, of your C-level leadership, of even your own team, to help evangelize the power and value of what we do in data management. It is the #1 data book in performing arts on Amazon, because through some crazy AI categorization process, my book was categorized as performing arts. So there's no other data book ahead of me. We can make the data do anything, can't we? And I'm published by Techniques Publications, who also published the DemBock too. So it's definitely legit. So take a look for that book. And as I said, everything I'm talking about today is in that book, and I'll cover a whole bunch of high-level concepts for you. What inspired me to get this going, to write this book after a couple of decades in the data space, is I was listening and I heard all this talk about data science, data literacy, even data storytelling. And I asked myself, where's the voice of data management in all this? And I couldn't hear it. Our data science peers, they talk about munging and wrangling all the time. Something tells me if they did more work connecting with folks like you, they wouldn't have to spend so much time munging and wrangling their data. They get better data to start with. Data literacy is all about analytics. Data storytelling, even in its current incarnation, is primarily focused on business intelligence and the analytics side. So being a standard bearer and a cheerleader for our part of the group there, the data management side, I felt it was important to kind of put our principles in place and widen this idea of data storytelling. Now, some very, iconic leaders in the data space wrote an article in Dataversity. Hopefully you're all familiar with that site there. And they said data management has failed and has presented us with a historic opportunity. So this kind of bold call to action from Tom Redmond, who's been around for decades, just an iconic data leader, the data doc, Tom Landley, even Loretta, a few of the other folks you can see in there from the DAMA side, who all pulled together and wrote this editorial. And they said there's 3 things we need to do to get data management a little more attention. One was remove technology from the conversation. The second one was to focus on outcomes, not minutia. And the third one was to earn senior level engagement. And they said, as a community, we have failed to educate leaders to the need for high quality data and craft messages that people will listen to. I agree totally with that last line. How do we craft messages that people will listen to? I'll come back to this idea of data quality as a hook, And in case you can't already tell, I don't think it works, but it's certainly, I agreed with them and said, okay, yeah, there's an issue here in terms of the messaging. About 3 weeks later, I wrote my own editorial that said data management hasn't failed, but data management storytelling has, and said there's multiple reasons why data management programs fail, yet an overwhelming majority suffer from the inability to demonstrate and then communicate business alignment. That's two different things. Demonstrate it and then let people know about it. And so that's the niche hopefully I'm filling and helping you in terms of beefing up those soft skills to demonstrate and also communicate that value. And just a fun fact here, over last year, their blog was number 9 and mine was number 10. So we had a nice kind of sequence in terms of people reading their call to action and then my response to it, which was respectful, but just kind of took the edge in a little bit different way because I really feel it's the messaging we got to hone in on. And if you don't believe either of us, let's take a look at McKinsey. They published this white paper, said 6 ways to drive data governance excellence. Certainly data governance, a core part of data management. If you look at 3 of the 6, secure top management's attention, integrate with primary transformation themes, meaning what are the strategic intentions of that enterprise, and just simply generate excitement about data. All 3 of those need a story. So we've got plenty of data, if you will, backing up the idea that we've all got to be able to tell a better story about why data management is important to our organizations. Now let's put it in the context of macro trends. A lot of people spend most of their time, certainly at the senior leadership side, focusing on things that you see in these bubbles, whether it's digital transformation, converting their widgets to an as-a-service offering. How do they apply AI or move into e-commerce, know your customer, account-based marketing, data privacy regulations all over the world, the Internet of Things, transforming your customer experience, or even the total 4th industrial revolution. All these major trends that are occupying the brain space of all our senior leaders. I look at all of those and I say, you can't do any of those without data management. So I would claim that data management is macro trend agnostic. No matter what these bubbles were filled with 5 years ago, no matter what we're talking about today, no matter what we're going to talk about in 5 and 10 years, it is always going to need well-managed, expertly stewarded, foundational data to make it all work. The software can't replace it. Some new technique can't replace it. And every time I hear about somebody with some brand new breakthrough, I listen until they say something like, well, it accesses these structured tags, or we've got this reference library, or we link to some form of master data. It's always in there. So at this point, bring it on. Give me a trend and I will help find the data management element and the foundational relationship it has in it. So be confident about that. They won't talk about data management as a macro trend, as a big thing, but obviously we feed all that stuff one way or the other. So the truth about data management, I'm peppering this with a couple of pictures of me on stage. I guess that's why I got the performing arts tag in Amazon. I loved it when we could walk around, and hopefully I'll be visiting all of you in person someday again. But the value of every digitally transformative customer-facing initiative, every as-a-service offering, every foray into e-commerce, every enterprise software implementation is inextricably linked to the successful output of data management efforts. There's just no way around it. And that might be a really fancy way to say garbage in, garbage out. Rubbish in, rubbish out. It's the same story every time. So I like to elevate that GIGO idea to this idea of the golden rule of data. Do upon your data as you would have it do upon you. What you put in is what you get out every time. So garbage in, garbage out. If you put garbage into ERP, you get a bad ERP. You put garbage into CRM, you get missed customer opportunities. You put garbage into FinTech, you might get a visit from the regulators. Garbage into ML, bad robots. Garbage into BI, BS. Garbage into AI, AS, artificial stupidity. No matter how you slice it or how you dice it, the golden rule of data prevails. Do upon your data as you would have it do upon you. Now here's some quotes, despite my feeling about that. These are actual quotes. I've heard actual analytics leaders, business intelligence experts spout. Oh, data has no value until it's turned into analysis. And without analytics, data is just a cost center. And it's not about the data, it's about the insight. I hate that kind of stuff. I hate that tone. Why do our business intelligence peers have to make it a zero-sum game? Why do they have to say data is worthless until I do my work and pit us against each other? I think that's got to stop. So when you hear a BI leader or an analytics leader talk that way, remind them, have they ever heard a baker say, oh, this flour is worthless until I make it into bread? No, because they respect the ingredients. So one note to our business intelligence friends out there, respect the ingredients. And by the way, when our business leaders hear the analytics side bicker with the data management side, they don't understand those nuances. They think we just can't agree, and they leave the room and we remain in there unfunded and confused. So let's be on the same side here. We need data, we need analytics. It's not a zero-sum game. So data storytelling, as I mentioned, probably the hottest non-technical thing out there. There's data storytelling, plenty of it about analytics and business intelligence. Here's 9 of the many, many books that cover the analytics version of data storytelling, which is how you put analytics in play. How do you use visualization? How do you use other kinds of techniques to make sure people understand the value of the metrics, of the indicators, of whatever that analysis is showing you. But then there's 2 types of data storytelling. There's also the data kind for data management. And right now I've got the only book out there covering that space, covering our side of the team. So I felt like there's a reason to have both. This is not either or. You need both. You've got to be able to articulate both. And so on the analytics side, really talking about business intelligence, what I like to say is, how do you derive meaning from data? And those areas that do that, data literacy, data science, machine learning, AI, visualization, that sort of thing, that tend to be vertically focused around a given business problem. Then you've got the data management side, determining the truth, hence the meaning of my truth hat. That's why I'm on that side. That's data governance, that's data quality, that's master data, reference data, metadata, MDM, RDM, PIM, all those foundational activities that make sure the analytics side have the right content that they can work on to make that data as valuable as it could be. And data management I see as a very horizontal effort, as something that touches every part of the organization. So the 2 types of data storytelling, again, analytics or stories with data, how to use it, and then data management storytelling about the data, about making it. So you've got to use it, but before you use it, you've got to make it. And even in the context of a story, analytics creates the plot. Data management establishes the characters. But before I go on, truth before meaning here, it is not chicken or egg. It is egg and omelet. You've got to determine the truth first before you derive meaning. So let me show you an example of this plot and characters idea just briefly. So the plot of a data story that an analytics group might come up with, simple headline. Our market share is down in our top regions, and they may have a suggestion that says, so we need to execute some targeted promotions to avoid customer churn, whatever the recommendation might be. But they've determined at a high level, our market share is down in our top regions. Wonderful analytics insight. But the characters in that story, they come from data management. How do you know about market share? What is market share? Market share is a combination of defined customers, of specific products, of competitors within a certain category, of different category sets that everybody agrees on within that market. And top regions are defined geographies, markets that you've set up and everybody agrees on as well. So if you don't have that business glossary, if you don't have that consistent definition across your organization, then this story won't make sense. You've got to know who the characters are, and those characters get established in data management. What is a customer? What is our product hierarchy? What is our market configuration? All those things are managed by folks like you, not the BI side. So starting a data management story, let me give you a couple of examples here. How do you get it going? And for me, it's always important to grab somebody in those first couple minutes, and that first way to have them understand, all right, why are you there? Especially when you talk to C-level folks. I've had more than my share of C-level executives that I've been able to share insight with and conversations with. They like to get to the point. They like things simplified, not simplistic, but they also want to understand the why. I've rarely had any of them say, how do you do that? They might interrupt you and say, why do we even care about this? So starting your story, that's important. So how would you start? Would you use a classic data story, a storyteller like Hans Christian Andersen? There once was some ugly data. Don't worry, I won't sing more, that'll be it. Maybe you start with something like this. We need a golden record. And the CEO just says, well, that sounds expensive. This is from the book, so plenty of cartoons in the book as well. Maybe you start this way. See, it all makes sense. Here's what we're gonna do. Don't do that. This reference data architecture, this data model, beautiful. I know that this works, but you're not at that point yet. If you got a moment with the CEO and you show them that, that's the last moment you're gonna get with the CEO. So save that work. It's important, you gotta figure it out, but don't start there. And I just love picking on Gartner anyway. So this is one of their least informative graphs that they put out here. Tremendous insight. Organizations measuring the value of master data, 90% said, no, we don't measure it. And 10% said other. I hope yes is in other somewhere. Here's a couple popular false starts. Again, this might be a little controversial, might be a little heretical here, but just go with me on it, hear me out, because I want to help you sell this stuff and get the funding and support you need. The number one most popular false start in why we need data management is we need to do a data quality initiative. Data quality is important. Of course, you've got to manage it. Of course, you've got to track it and score it, and it's incredibly critical to the value of the data that you produce, but it doesn't make a good headline. And let me explain why. Quality itself is a very emotional, subjective term. When you go up to the board and say, we need better data quality, and then you've got to go through a tremendous amount of discussion about what you even mean by that. And P.S., when you get that good data quality, it's about what you do with that better data. That's the point. So quality, my tip to talk about quality with a CEO is to not talk about quality with the CEO. When I go back to Redmond's conversation and him mentioning that they had trouble explaining the value of data quality, if it worked, we wouldn't have this discussion right now. It's been decades and decades that people lead with this idea of data quality when they pitch data management initiatives. And if it had worked, why are we having these kinds of discussions? It doesn't make a good way to start your story. It's important, but don't start there. Talk about data structuring. Talk about reference data. I'll get to some ideas. Don't mention reference data. Sorry, got off track here. But quality is an emotional, subjective word. Second false start. Data's the new oil. If there hasn't been, I'd like to know what has been a more destructive, distracting term in our space over the last couple years than this ridiculous headline. Part of the problem is, first of all, data's not new. So let's start there. Doug Laney and I both take apart this idea. I do a couple pages in the book on why it's ridiculous. But if you take a look even at this graphic that's been used over and over again by data companies to explain the value, you don't have to go any further than the subhead of this article that appeared in The Economist that started all this off. The data economy demands a new approach to antitrust rules. Antitrust rules. Is that something you want to talk about right away? How about the headline above that little subhead? Regulating the internet giants. This article is about the regulation and control of data from these large platforms. It's not about creating value for data for your organization. So it's a terrible metaphor. And actually, some people say that caveman drawings are the first data. So if you use Flintstone timing, that makes data older than oil. So it isn't even the new anything. Anyway, forget that, it's bad poetry. And the last one really quickly is there's just more data now than ever before. We have so much data and you start to flood people with 1 billion statistics that are hard to relate to. So these are 3 kind of false start stories here. And I feel like this kind of stuff isn't getting us where we want to go. You might disagree, might be a little painful, but I want to give you at least the hard truth from my side and my experience that starting your story with these kinds of ideas doesn't get to the point quick enough. And if you have to explain why you're doing this, you're already wasting your time. So these old stories need to change. So where do you start? You don't start with data. You start with the purpose of your enterprise. Every enterprise has a data story to tell about what they do in data management. And the purpose of that story, as I said, aligns with the purpose of your enterprise. Every company, every enterprise, no matter what category you're in, no matter what geography, no matter what you make, the purpose of that business is to provide value to your relationships through your brands at scale. Every company does this. Value to relationships through your brands at scale. When we talk about value, we mean things like how do you grow the business? How do you improve the business? How do you protect the business? Those 3 buckets are where most of business effort is focused. How do we grow, increase sales? How do we improve operational efficiency? How do we protect, mitigate risk? If those aren't the things you're doing with data, then I don't know what you're doing with data. Now, the beauty of foundational things like master data and reference data, they can do all 3 of these things, sometimes with the exact same record. But that's where value is created in an organization: grow, improve, and protect. And when we talk about scale, scale must have technology, hardware, software, data. Data needs data management. So very quickly, in my view, you can go from this idea of providing value to relationships through your brands at scale to the need for highly structured data about these topic areas. Fill in the blanks in your own organization when you do your story. When we say relationships, what do we mean by that? Customers, vendors, partners, prospects, citizens, patients, consumers, clients, whatever your terminology is for the business that you're in. Once we go from this high-level statement to the types of relationships, things get very specific to your vertical, but those relationships are core to your business. You don't have relationships, you don't have a business. And it should be pretty apparent to everybody that these are classic master data domains. So how do you provide value to relationships if you don't have structured data about those relationships? And when we say brand, it can mean a lot of things. It can mean product, it can mean service, offering, location, banner. It's also the things that make up your brand. Is it a finished good? Is it ingredients? Is it materials? What are the inputs that go into that? What are the supplies? What is your supply chain? What is your go-to-market? All those things, as you know, have lots of data in there that needs to be better managed. So if you get agreement on some version of providing value to relationships through your brands at scale, then you've got to go quickly and say, how's our data on that stuff? Are we managing it well? If you want to do this at scale, we need to spend more time on these areas. And I'll show you some examples. So let's talk about leveraging these 3 V's of data storytelling, if you will. As I mentioned, the 3 V's with a knowing wink to big data. Vocabulary: how do you establish inaccessible vocabulary? Voice: how do you harmonize to a common voice? And then vision: how do you illuminate your business vision with your story? So this first V, establish an accessible vocabulary. The words you use are important. I already picked on quality. Again, very important to have, doesn't make such a good pitch. And these very tactical, kind of project-oriented, ad hoc types of words like cleansing and freshness and hygiene, those don't sound very strategic to me. Use definitive words, structure, standards. A lot of people understand the idea of standards. You can relate those very easy to their own personal interaction with things like GTINs and UPC codes in a supermarket, or their standard personal identifier they might use with their insurance company. You know, the way you describe it, the idea and the need for structured and standardized data to people who are not in the space that we are. Coverage, interoperability, these things are all core to making things happen at scale. And think about your enterprise terminology that you use in your enterprise for things like relationships, your offerings, your hierarchies, your segmentation, your geographies. These core dimensions are critical in any kind of terminology we have. And use your own vertical nomenclature. Your industry, no matter what it is, has some form of standard, has some kind of common terminology. So when I say customer to one kind of company, it might be something different than customer to another. So even though I said everything is kind of, I try and highlight the common things I see, the foundational, the motifs, the through lines that I see everywhere. But once you get into your individual vertical, the terminology will change. So you want to speak, no matter what, you want to speak in your vertical terminology, but you also want to speak the language of your business. Do you want to explain to your business owners a whole bunch of terminology that only you and your team need to know? Or do you want to actually become more business literate and use their terminology? That's the key. And so vocabulary tip here, start with your business glossary. If you've done that work, which is a kind of early step in any kind of data governance program, those are the terms of your business. I articulate those as what I call the 4 C's of master data. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. A lot of the terminology, the basic foundational terminology for a company comes from this idea of these 4 C's. And this is how I explain to business folks the need for and the scope of most master data projects. The 4 C's are code, company, category, and country. So the first C, a code, you need a unique identifier, a customer number, a vendor ID, a tax ID, VAT, whatever that number system is in whatever vertical or area that you're talking about. But you need a unique number and a unique code on a record to have it exist in a database. I have a code, therefore I am. Then you need a company or some form of hierarchy, a parent-child relationship. It might be ship to, build to, plan to, sell to. It might be all the different levels that you interact with some other form of relationship, either on the buying or selling side. And it helps with very important use cases like we're sending a salesperson to the lower left oval. Did they know that it was related to the lower right oval? So you need some kind of hierarchy. Then you need a category so you can know what kind of thing you're talking about. Category drives market share analysis. It drives segmentation, targeting. We're really good with this kind of company. We have to find more of this kind of company. A lot of different kinds of category structures out there, and I've seen them all. I haven't seen yours, but I will predict that many of you have a category on your database called other. Do you have other? Or I've even seen other. I asked somebody, why do you have other? They said, because the salespeople have such trouble spelling miscellaneous. The only one I saw that didn't have other had an attribute value DK. We asked them what that meant. And they said it stands for don't know. Different kind of other. And then finally, you need country or some form of geography, just because they all start with C. I picked country, and different kinds of configurations of geography too. Media market, sales market, measurement market. It could be zip code, postal code, state, province, region, all the different ways you configure geography. But these are your basic elements. These are the atomic piece parts of data structure, or the things you are trying to structure. And once you have these 4 C's, you know where something is, you know what kind of thing it is, you know who owns it, and you know it's unique. Think about all the data problems that go away when you know those 4 things. I'm just going to take a Zen moment here, just imagining all your data problems going away if you had those 4 C's. It's just even nice to think about it. Now, you may call them something different. You may call it entity, hierarchy, sector, geography. You might call it store, account, channel, or market. It might be product, brand, segment, or region. It might be thing, parent, type, or place, but it's where it is, what it is, who owns it, and that it's unique. And that's how I explain data structuring to people who aren't in the data structuring part of the space. So those 4 C's are important in terms of helping you create that vocabulary. Number 2, let's harmonize to a common voice. The voice is how you tell that story, and that needs to echo and harmonize also with the way your company presents itself. What's the positioning of your company? What's the positioning of your brand? Are there little nuances in how you market your business externally to your consumers that you can kind of co-opt internally to market the value of data management to your data consumers? Think about that idea of your data brand internally aligning with the data brand, the external brand your company has. But you want to share and propagate this narrative and practice an elevator pitch. We've all heard that elevator pitch terminology. It's that quick, if you bumped into your CEO in the elevator and they said, why do you work for this company, or why is what you're doing is important, or what would you like me to do for you? You've got to be ready. And even more important, you got to have that proactively ready to get and nurture engagement across your executive base. What is that elevator pitch? That 1 to 2 minute description of what you want to do and why you want to do it and why it's important to the organization. Put that together, practice it, write it out, practice it in the mirror, test your team, have them work on it too. I know it's hard. I know it's uncomfortable. I know sometimes it might feel like it's easier to just do it the day you have to do it, but why would you waste that opportunity? Everybody practices. Everybody needs a coach. Tiger Woods still has a coach. You've got to practice. Why would you want to do it for the first time when it really counts? You've got to rehearse that and get your team to role play and practice with each other as well. Avoid all these in-depth technical explanations, because again, that gets deep into the how. But you want this consistent tone and tenor, so no matter who in your team or who in your wider influence base at your organization talks about the core value of what you're doing, you all use the same kind of approach. And create these internal communication vehicles. I've got lots of examples in my book of companies who've put together a monthly newsletter, or created an internal marketing program where they looked for a data hero every month, one in sales, and the next month in finance, and the next one in operations. Find those people in your influencer base internally who all understand that value. That hot salesperson who used that data that you helped put together to drive that sale. Well, you've got that other side of the sales force who's just going, I'm not going to waste my time on this. I know everything I need to know. You want to find those more forward-thinking folks and make them part of your sphere. And focus on those business topics, as I mentioned. How do you grow? How do you improve? And how do you protect? And my little voice tip here, seek out other storytellers in your organization, in sales, in marketing, in corporate communications. They would love to help you. And you have to remember, if you're a senior leader and you're going up for funding and everybody else is going up for funding, you're going up against some pretty good storytellers. If you got to pitch against sales, that's what they do for a living. Marketing creates stories for a living. So you're a little bit behind the curve there on the storytelling side. That's why I'm trying to help you. But remember, you're up competing for funding against folks who can spin a pretty good tale. So you want to at least be on their peer level. If it's making you nervous, just practice. We can all do it. Everybody wants you to succeed, but these are the tips I've found that help you break through that clutter and make your point to senior leadership. When you put together a narrative, it's got to have a balance. Now, I talked about I'm the why guy, but you also need the how for sure. So I assume you can do both, or you understand both, but it's that balance in the middle. If you think about it in that classic idea, sizzle and steak, the why is the sizzle, the how is the steak. Now, nobody wants cold steak, but nobody wants empty sizzle either. So you want to have it right in the middle there. When you think about creating that compelling story, it's about head in the clouds. It's about why we do it. It's about creating audience empathy. It's got to sound cool and inspiring and evangelize folks out there. On the technical accuracy side, on the how, you got feet on the ground. How are we going to get it done? Can we do it? Does it make sense? Is it practical? Can we execute? Now, the worst case on technical accuracy is just boring techno babble, a whole bunch of technical requirements. Who wants to read that? But the reverse side, on the compelling story side, if you go too far that way, you just get this buzzy marketing spin. So as I mentioned, there's a balance. You want to have both. So my last V is, how do you illuminate that business vision? Now, my view is everything you do in data management must enable the strategic intentions of your enterprise. There's a lot of chatter in LinkedIn often when people talk about a data strategy or a master data strategy or a reference data strategy or, God forbid, a metadata strategy. You go, there's not strategies for those individual things. All those things are there to support the strategy of the business. So what is your business meant to do? Look for those things and draw that connection between where your business is trying to go and how data can help it. That's the connection you want to make. It's not just data for data's sake. Think about the major initiatives that you've got going regarding those two big domains, relationships and brands, lots of juicy opportunities in there. And it's about the business. And this bifurcation that we have often when we're on the IT and the data side, and we talk about talking to the business, I know what we mean by that, but we are all the business. You are part of your business. You have a rightful place there. So learn about your business. Now, a vision tip, where do you find this stuff if you don't know it? It's usually published. It's usually declared in some way. If you're a public company, it's in your annual report. The strategy of your business, the strategic intentions are announced in your annual report or in your leadership meeting or some kind of strategy statement. A really good place to go is your own investor day presentations. So if you're not familiar with those and you work for any form of public company, on a regular basis, your leadership goes out to the investment community and promotes your own company. Where do we want to go? What are we trying to accomplish? What's our competitive set like? They do it, and they put on their full game day uniform to do the best presentation they can to highlight the vision of your company. So it's right there. Find that. And when you find something in your investor day presentation that talks about transforming your customer experience, start to tease that apart. Well, our customer data isn't that good, or this is why our customer data is so important. So lots of examples again in the book, but these are really good, juicy places that you can find how you understand where your business is trying to go. Now, the last couple moments here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this all in play, and I'm going to show you an actual example that I used presenting to a global enterprise this was when I was at Dun & Bradstreet, and you'll see a Dun & Bradstreet reference in there. And we were brought in by the IT team who was managing their master data. Dun & Bradstreet, obviously a third-party source of what I called, when I was there, pre-mastered commercial content. I wish I'd come up with that term a lot earlier. But this idea of, okay, they didn't understand why. Okay, the group that we were working with had to present the value of what they were doing to their own organization. They already did the how. They already did ROI calculations. They already put together a formal business case, but they weren't really breaking through in some maybe even more emotional ways. They weren't really capturing that connection between where their business was trying to go and how we were going to help them get there. So I went to their investor day presentation. I'm drinking my own Kool-Aid, as they say. So this is a kind of a clip show version of it, summation of it, but this was where I found the strategic intentions of their enterprise. This is a Fortune 200 company, a global company. And so when you want to find their vision, there it was, published right there. We aspire to be the premier partner of choice for our customers, suppliers, employees, and it went on from there. There it is. I wasn't making this stuff up. They want to be the premier partner with their customers and suppliers. It's not hiding. How do you do that? Why is it important to manage the data about that? When we looked for their voice, we found it in a lot of things that they talked about. Again, this is abbreviated version here, but in their own published strategic framework, they talked about the importance of customer engagement, of enterprise efficiency, effectiveness, and brand management. Grow, improve, and protect are all in there. They wanted to differentiate their customer experience. They wanted to localize productivity and efficiency, a ton of clues across the operating groups as well. And they had a CIO who was quoted in their Investor Day presentation. We have this constant mantra: be more efficient, deliver high quality service, spend less on sustaining, deliver more innovation. You can't do any of that stuff at scale without data management. So we found their vision, we found their voice, their vocabulary was inherent in their company facts. They do business in 90 countries. Can you imagine the enterprise system silos they've got in that organization? The more countries, the more complicated it gets. 800 suppliers, 100,000 customers. Do they have a unique identifier? Do they have hierarchy? Do they have classification? Do they have geography? Those 4 C's again: code, company, category, country. No, all those underpinnings weren't there. So we were able to, and there was deeper review than some of this, but just to highlight, the vision, the voice, and the vocabulary was behind the scenes in this single slide that showed us and gave us a lot of tips and a lot of insight on how to craft that narrative. And Checkmate was looking at the actual data itself. They had one company, Panasonic. We ran it against the file, and we found they had 185 duplicates for the same customer. How can they be the premier partner of choice with Panasonic Mobile Communications when they have 185 copies of the same location? These aren't hierarchy elements. These aren't different, individual stores. These are duplicates. What a mess. Stops there. This has got to be fixed before you can even begin to promote and attempt to be the premier partner of choice for your customers. So hopefully this example kind of brings it real for some of you out there on how to pull together that vocabulary, voice, and vision with a live example from a real company. Here is the worst kind of data story to have to tell. So this is a very scary data story. This happened at the end of last year, I believe it was. Citigroup, who you would think and you would certainly hope would know better, was slammed with a $400 million fine for long-standing failure to resolve its risk in data systems. I talked earlier about how data quality never really gets to the board. Here was something right away. The bank has failed to implement and maintain a data governance program. You should take a look at this. Find this Justice Department write-up here on the case, because it is the worst kind of data story to have to tell. They could have bought and supplied and funded a whole lot of data management for $400 million, wouldn't you think? But it's all in there, down to the detail. Didn't have data management, didn't have hierarchies, had bad data duplicates. They mention what we do at a depth I have rarely seen in this kind of document. So these are all the wrong reasons to have to tell a data story, but there's certainly something that you could show people to say, we don't want to go there, do we? They should know better. If anybody from Citibank's on the line, all respect. So if you want to live happily ever after with your data story, remember every enterprise has one. It's about how you deliver value to your relationships through your brand at scale. 2 types of data story: the one about data, data management, determining the truth, and the more popular one out there, with data, business intelligence, and deriving meaning. Data management is macro trend agnostic. No matter where we've been, no matter where we are today, no matter where we're going, we're still going to need that foundational data to get there. You want to leverage those 3 V's of data storytelling: establish an accessible vocabulary, harmonize to a common voice, illuminate the business vision. And an effective narrative captures the hearts and minds of your business, and it can actually help motivate your team. How do you brand this? How do you really make this something that people are excited to be a part of? That's what I hope for all of you. And my last quote, just remember, good decisions you make on bad data are just bad decisions you don't know about yet. We'll take a little breath there. I want to thank you all. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Drew. We can open up for some questions, and hopefully that went okay. So,
Scott, that was fantastic. Thank you very much.
You bet.
That was great. Really appreciate the content. So, guys, happy that we ask questions. If you wouldn't mind just putting your hand up, and I'll try to control it. Please don't get too upset if I put someone in front of you. I'm sure there are lots of questions. Any hands up at the moment? Anyone would like to start the questioning?
Well, while you're thinking about it there, you can get my book, Telling Your Data Story, which says everything I talked about and more at Technics Publications, which is, if you go to Technics Pub, and if you use the code Data Whisperer, you'll save 20%. Please follow me on LinkedIn. There's my QR code. So if you put your phone right up to the screen, you'll get right to my profile. Follow me there. Talk about a data guy. And as I mentioned, I've got this 50 videos and more on YouTube. And hopefully you can subscribe there as well and see some of those videos. So we've got one question. Let's see.
It's from Jan. Jan is our special question asker.
All right.
Okay. Hi, Scott. All right.
Hi.
Yes, actually, as usual, let me get my little question in before the other people start. You mentioned, about a data dictionary and business terms and things like that. Actually, don't you think that that is one of the, of telling this whole story, if you don't really have this business terms and data going, but all these things coming together where there's actually a common language. Don't you think that is one of the biggest problems in actually starting to tell the story the way you do it? Because nobody really understands what the other people say. It's this Tower of Babel.
I completely agree with you, Johan. That's why the first V is vocabulary. How do we get the terminology straight? How do we make sure we understand each other? We're on the same page. And I wonder often how any kind of company can really do the things they want to do if they don't have that standard vocabulary. I know that putting together that business glossary, that data dictionary can be very painful and time consuming. Yep. And I don't get a lot. My consulting practice really in sort of the high level storytelling stuff. There's a lot of great folks who can help with the execution of that. But part of what I try and counsel people on is this isn't some big philosophical personal journey exercise. Just come up with some common terms and let's move forward. We don't have to debate the nth degree exception of this inside that on top of this. There's always somebody in there. How does most of it work for most of the time for most of what your business is focused on? I'm not trying to gloss over the details or the nuances, but so much time is disproportionate amount of time is spent on the exceptions that really don't even, in some cases don't even need to be recognized. So, and I also understand that sales might have a different definition of customer than operations and billing, and you may need to be able to, link those or integrate those or move across those different kinds of definitions. But you got to get you got to tamp down this vocabulary. You got to get it straight. I don't know how you get on. I don't know how you move on without it.
Actually, just a question on that. Actually, sorry that I take. Actually, how do you how do you get higher level people in the business to actually understand this and actually give you the go ahead and the funding? Because that's what you're talking about, is to actually get people to buy in. Actually, how do you think you should get people to get very scared and actually start doing this and funding you?
I think there's two ways. One, again, focusing on the vision. What is your company trying to do? What are the problems that those folks you're trying to engage with have? Where do they want to go? And they will fall into most likely those three buckets. If it's sales, they're trying to grow the business. If it's operations, they're trying to improve the business. If it's finance and legal, they're trying to protect the business. Those things, you want to find those challenges and kind of summarize them in that clearer way. Find the elements of that challenge that you've got data pieces for. As I mentioned over and over again, if there's a customer initiative, how's our data on customer? We don't even have a common definition of customer. How can you do that? When marketing is talking about doing all this customer 360 stuff and we don't have a common definition of customer. So it's really reinforcing that. Boil those down. Get a few of them. You don't need 20, you don't need 50. Get 3 or 5, 10's too many. And just pound away on those core issues. For me, that's a way to help and speak in their language.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Michael?
Yes.
All yours, sir.
Yeah, sorry, struggling with the camera, but yeah, thanks so much, Scott. Yeah, so you also touched on the fact that people within the analytics and data science community kind of know the pain because they have to spend a lot of time wrangling with bad data. Are you seeing more of them advocating for data management and getting more involved in kind of promoting it in the business from their side?
Not enough, not anywhere near enough. I think this whole wrangling and effort that people are talking about, you know, I challenge every data science leader that I talk to. It's like, do you know your data management peers? Have you connected with them, or do you just start with an empty spreadsheet, or, you know, your R program or Python, or whatever the heck else you're using? And when I follow a lot of data science people, and I'm in a data science community on LinkedIn, and I talk to them a lot too, and it's just like, why are you spending all this time? You know, and P.S., why are you proud of it? Don't you hate how they're almost like, I spend 80% of my time wrangling data? Anybody who spends 80% of their time doing something that isn't their job, then what is their job really? So I think there's a lot of opportunities to reach out to that part of the community and say, how can we help? We may have, you know, we've got a customer master. We have a standard product taxonomy. We already have all our market definitions coded and structured. Use this stuff as part of your input. It's not going to get rid of all the 80% or 90% or whatever the heck they're talking about, but I believe it's going to get rid of a lot of it. And it makes that data more dependable because you're using the definitions and the structure that the organization's already supported, as well as more integratable because it's at the common levels that the company has already established. Ship to, build to, plan to, market definition, customer definition, whatever those happen to be. So I don't see it enough. And hopefully we can, you know, this will help reach out to that group too. But every opportunity I can find, I say, you know, let's stamp out munging in our lifetime, shall we? Is my goal.
Scott, there's a question from Esty. I don't know if she wants to ask it or if she wants me to read it out. Esty, what are your choice? What Esty was asking is, right, you go.
I can read it. Yeah. So telling the actual data story. So if you tell the complete truth, like people could get pretty angry at you, because it's way more convenient to believe maybe a nice sugar-coated version. So how do you mix diplomacy when you tell a data story with the actual hard facts?
That's a good, yeah. Excellent point. I actually have an example that I'll show. We have a couple. I don't know how much time we have, but you do at some point need to show them the ugly reality, and a lot of times that's exposing them to just awful data that you are forced to manage because they're, you know, your sales force doesn't care about standards, or people are keying in, you know, free text into a customer field. And when I was running a sales team at Nielsen, we did a lot of data management work as an outsource. So we saw people's files and they were terrible. And that helped us put a story together on why they needed us. Bad hierarchies, segmentation's missing, you know, other and DK. And I affectionately referred to that part of the process as telling somebody their baby's ugly. It's hard to do. And you want to be diplomatic in the way that you're not attacking people, but you got to attack the data. We can't get there with this kind of garbage that's being unmanaged by the whole operations team or the legal, or, you know, whoever it happens to be as that source. We've got to get these standards in place. They wouldn't do it with money, right? There's a lot of parallels between data management and financial management. You wouldn't let everybody spend whatever they wanted, whenever they want to, and not kind of track it. You know, if data is an asset, if data has value, then you should manage it like that with at least the same principles. So you want to be diplomatic, but you don't want to lose the opportunity to not make your point. You got to make your point still, and sometimes that truth hurts.
Howard, you got a question there?
Yes, I do, Scott. I really like the way in which you present it, and it reminds me of the work we do when we build a data strategy, and that's linking to the value proposition that the business has. So, how are we providing value? To who are we providing value, and what is our value? And I'm actually I've got Daneo on the line as well from MTN, and we keep on a lot of times we keep on fighting with the situation of that business architecture is not always available to us. It's not always transparent. So these things can change by department. Each department may have a segment of the value stream that they're looking after, and it's hard sometimes to put all this stuff together. I get it at a very high level, but when your company is very fragmented, you need to be able to be talking to, or federated, you need to be able to be talking to the right exec at the right level.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. And some tips I've had, again, I built my career selling to large organizations, and part of it was a tremendous amount of due diligence. And so sometimes actually, if you're from outside the organization, you have a chance to kind of skip around and learn more. But as I told my children when they went into business, it's impossible to know too much about your own company. And, as you collect these anecdotes, and I always try and start with the, at the top, what are the prevailing, strategic initiatives? What are the departments that, they've got? How are they organized? What's the go-to-market? How do they bring the goods that they make to the people who get value from them? There's a lot of, if it's manufactured good, there's piece parts that go into it, then it goes in a truck and a warehouse into a store, lots of complications, lots of different parties, brokers, intermediaries, agencies. Or is it just a really seamless deliverable that's just, as a service over the web, that's a digital delivery? There's lots of different ways that stuff gets to who gets it, but that's where a lot of those things are. And for me, that's starting with, okay, what does this company do? How does it do it? And then tracking that in some kind of organized fashion. I give some tips in the book of just kind of listing out all the areas, but it is knowing as much about your company as you possibly can and being able to articulate that back again.
Thank you. Daneo, I wonder if you're willing to just ask. I know you've been battling with this for a while. Is there something you'd like to add to that question?
Howard, thanks for mentioning my dilemma, but I think I got the gist of it. Is just create your own little thing on the side. I mean, that's the gist of what Scott is saying. So I'm actually on that mission of creating my own mind map around what I want to achieve from a business architect point of view. Thanks.
There's a lot of common things, again, I put it in the book, just graphically, how do you explain it? I always draw master data management on the bottom. I never put it on the side or on the top or in the middle. A lot of people try and put whatever they're working on in the middle and make them the center of everything. Nobody buys that, really. It's a foundation. It's horizontal. You've got verticals, there's a horizontal. You've got silos, you've got a foundation. I talk about people are really good at adding columns. They're not so good at aligning rows. So even that kind of consistent, almost dramatic way to frame it of, problems are columns and solutions are rows, helps people understand it in a graphic sense. When you draw these pictures, make them simple. Well, wonderful. I don't know if there's any more questions there. This was certainly fun to virtually go to South Africa. I did promise all the leaders we'd give away a free book. So I'm giving away a free book to the first person who asked the question, Johan Bornman. Send me your email, or Howard, if you can send me your email, we'll get you a digital copy of Telling Your Data Story. And I'm thrilled everybody else was able to join. Hopefully the book will be helpful, or this was helpful. But, I love working with the data management community. I think you're, the unsung heroes at a lot of organizations, and all that super sexy stuff doesn't happen without the work that all of you do. So keep it up. Keep it up. They can't get there without you.
Great. Scott, it's been from my side, and I think from the whole group, it's been a fantastic interaction. I love your energy and your passion, and you've given me a lot of good tips. I think a lot of people are going to get stories coming out of their ears. So from my side, yeah, thank you so much. And we definitely will be following you on YouTube. I'm keen to see these puppet shows. That's got me intrigued. So if nobody else has got any questions, as always, we will publish the recording. And Scott, hopefully we meet up with you again sooner rather than later.
Absolutely, Howard. Drew, I want to thank everybody for joining and
Thanks,
have a
Scott.
great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you very much, Scott. I will read your book. Thanks.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Cheers, everybody.